everyone. My name is Jane Hobson. I'm the managing editor at PAX International Magazine. And for today's edition of PAX Panel, I'm joined by the lovely En route International team. And we're going to discuss crafting a cohesive cheese program from source to service. And let me say, I've got great expectations for this discussion. So without further delay, I'll have each panelist now introduce themselves.
Okay, Nick Wiley, I'm the Managing Director at En route.
I'm Andrew Sharp. I'm the Procurement and Supply Chain Director for En route.
Hi, I'm Georgina Mogridge. I'm the Head of Category Development for the dairy sector, including cheese boards and cheese accompaniments.
Hi, I'm Michaela Gazzaridia, and I am the Research and Insight Manager at En route.
Hello, I'm Hannah Jordan, Head of Design and Packaging at En route.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you to En route for being our sponsor for today's PAX panel. I think maybe a good place to start for my very first question would be to kind of look at, since the rebrand in 2024, En route has been developing its passenger solutions, supply chain services, and sourcing segments, is my understanding. So I'm wondering, how do these various segments work together at En route to create this cohesive cheese program for its travel catering clients? Who wants to kick this one off?
Shall I? Yeah, I'll pick this one up, and then hopefully I'll stay quiet and let people talk about the detail and demonstrate that we've got competence across the team for the rest of the time that we're together. So yeah, thanks, Jane, for the opportunity to be able to talk about something that's really kind of central to En route. I think I wouldn't say we're necessarily famous for it, but definitely cheese is front and center of our organization. We've been supporting a cheese program for over nearly 10 years. So I think it's over 8 years, but nearly 10 years now. And it's something that I think differentiates us from a lot of other organizations in the marketplace. Hopefully that's because we managed to execute something that's actually pretty challenging. It takes a whole load of coordination between the various different functional areas we've got, in terms of there's a product and category development, in terms of proposition development element to it. There's a set of challenges around procurement. Cheese is a natural product. It's not manufactured in the same way as a processed product, although obviously there is some processing. So the reality is that you're looking to source product at the right condition. You're looking to pack it and optimize the conditions to make sure the passenger gets a great eating experience. So there's a little bit more to it than perhaps, some of the other manufactured products we work with. We've then got some packaging challenges. You've got shelf life challenges. You've got supply chain challenges in terms of getting product to all the stations across a network or a region. Ultimately, there's a whole set of things we need to consider around demand management in terms of making sure that airlines have got the right quantity to meet the various different passenger cabin requirements and volumes, which obviously vary from time to time. So I think probably cheese is a great example where we're able to combine the sourcing skills that we have across the organization or have within the organization, the supply chain skills of getting product across from a manufacturer, well, actually from the manufacturer of the cheese through to a packer, and then through onwards all to the stations for the airline and the caterers, and then also that passenger solution part, which is the customer facing piece in terms of how we've simplified the operation to minimize handling on board. Not every airline's team of stewards and stewardesses, the crew, the cabin crew, want to touch the cheese. Cheese is not something that's familiar to every nationality, and with many airlines having multicultural, multinational teams, some are familiar with cheese and some aren't. So the fact that we're able to provide a solution that minimizes handling on board, also minimizes handling at the caterer, means that our customer, the end user, the passenger, gets the best possible product at the right time every time, and it's not really been handled by anybody since it was originally packed and cut. So it's a great example of all of those different themes in one place, and we're very proud of the fact that we've got something pretty unique, and we're also proud that we're in the process of starting to roll that out beyond where we have serviced the market in both UK, Europe, and then the Middle East. We're now looking ahead of and towards IFSA, where we intend to launch that program in the US.
Right, right. Thanks, Nick. So I know Andrew as the supply chain and procurement director, and then Georgina as head of category development, and Hannah as head of design and packaging. I'm kind of wondering, what your take on how this all comes together. What would your 2 cents be here?
I think from my side, it all comes hand in hand. We can't just look at the product on its own, the packaging on its own, supply chain. Every single element needs to work together. And just to touch on whenever we're taking on a new brief, or meeting with our potential clients or existing clients, and to talk about some of these new services on board, it's about getting into that detail of what that challenge is. Is it about the loading optimization on board? Is it about wanting a new menu of products on board? Is it about wanting to look at more sustainable packaging? And we collectively look at all of those elements together, whether it is specific to the cheese or the packaging, because they all affect each other.
And certainly from a freshness and quality point of view, that's essential. So the way that we present, the way that we ship the product has a direct impact on that. As Nick mentioned earlier on, we use a piece of packaging which allows no double handling, basically, as it goes through the supply chain. So from the point where it's cut and packed initially, basically it maintains all of its freshness, and it's exactly as we expect it to be when it gets onto the aircraft and it's presented by the crew. They're the first people that touch it since it was cut. So all of those elements, as Hannah describes, are critical in terms of making sure that the end product is as it should be.
Yep. Yep. Anything else to add? Okay. So what would you say are some of the biggest challenges in sourcing these high quality cheeses? Because like Nick said, it's a natural product. Like it doesn't have the same processing. So how do you manage to source high quality cheeses that meet flavor expectations, but then because the inside of the aircraft cabin is such a unique space, how do you ensure that these products also perform well? What goes into making sure that it works in the aircraft cabin?
I think the kind of beginning of that question, in terms of the way that we're selecting the product in the first place, we're working with a small number of select sourcing partners who we've been working with for a long time. Certainly, the main one we've been working with since the beginning of the program. So we know them well, and they know us well. And between them, they've got relationships with over 200 cheese producers globally. So we've got those links that are going directly back to the cheese producers in the first instance. So we're not just going to a wholesaler or a supermarket and picking a product off of a shelf. And so those relationships give us access to an enormous variety of cheese, different cheese styles, different cheese types, different cheese provenance. And that really gives us a great deal of flexibility in terms of the cheese boards that we can develop.
And to your point, Andrew, we actually work with these partner suppliers to choose specific grades and flavor profiles that the crew can easily handle. So it's not just what makes it great for the passenger to consume throughout the shelf life, which our packaging and our processing make sure is fresh from the beginning to the end of the shelf life, which is something that's unique to us versus what some of our competitors can offer. But also we choose cheeses, we work with cheese graders to actually select things that work with the passenger profile. You don't want a cheese that actually may offend your taste buds at 35,000 feet. You want something that's actually luxurious, but also quite safe. People know what they like are on board.
Right.
I think the other thing, probably, Georgina, to touch on, is to talk a little bit about how we manage the kind of rotation process in terms of having change throughout the year, in terms of 3 or 4 rotations, and how we choose a portfolio of products initially, in terms of a decision to be around selection. But we're proposing a range that's going to give, hopefully, passengers, a number of different choices, but within a sort of broad framework. Do you want to just touch on that in terms of that rotational process and continuing availability as part of it as well, seasonality?
Yeah, so the way we operate is we completely tailor our solutions to our customer needs. So we think about dietary requirements, we think about handling and shelf life, whereabouts in the world is it actually going to fly to, but also from. We also think about what cabin class it goes into. All of these things actually impact our decision making around the cheeses we select and choose. So, for example, in first class, you might pick that really sensational hero cheese that you can't get anywhere else from a small creamery. I'm thinking of one in particular with a certain airline in mind. And actually, when we do some of this sourcing activity with our partner suppliers, we recommend that we find these cheeses that you can't get anywhere else. It actually means that that course within actually dining on an airline is part of the experience. It makes that airline journey part of your destination. So what we do is we actually curate a huge selection. We take these to our customers and we taste them with them. We actually create the selections with them. So whether that's the cheeses, we do pairings as well. So we've done things such as a British cheddar with a kimchi for some of our Asian carriers, which bridges that gap where dairy isn't traditionally consumed and cheese is a little bit seen as a little unsafe sometimes. They aren't very familiar with it like we are here in the UK. So using some of their cultural flavours actually sort of bridges that gap. But also within, say, some of the seasonality, I know, Nick, you touched on that. Christmas for us is a super luxurious time for a cheese board. So what better than, say, leaning into the trend of truffle? We sort of recommend that's paired with an acacia honey. That's something we've suggested to some of our customers previously, and actually they fly at Christmas a variety of truffle products. But also within seasonality, we look at the accompaniments. For example, harvests within, say, apricots and figs, we work with our technical team and our procurement team to make sure that the quality and consistency is good throughout the season so that the passenger can have a great experience, whether they're dining in January or in the height of summer, where we've actually had to take a variety of different seasonal products just to maintain that quality of supply.
Right, right. So my next question maybe ties in. I was going to ask, how do maybe consumer insights or passenger preferences influence the selection and development of cheese offerings across different airlines and cabin classes? You touched on that a little bit, but I'm wondering, is there, you kind of mentioned, for Asian carriers, cheese might not be as familiar. Are there any other kind of big preferences or influences that you have to keep in mind for your clients?
So one of the biggest trends that we're seeing is the regionality and the provenance coming through, particularly with the storytelling and, why it's so important that it comes from that farm or the story behind the heritage of the product. That really resonates with people just to kind of understand the full end-to-end cycle of what they're eating. So we definitely considered that quite a lot, and I don't think that trend's going to go anywhere. In fact, I think it's just going to keep progressing. On the other hand, we are also looking at the health and wellness trend. So obviously on the ground, that's really progressing across all categories. And now as we start to move into more of an inclusive sort of cheese dining, so whether it's for vegetarians, vegans, lactose intolerant. So we're seeing that kind of progress. So we're definitely keeping an eye on that as well, in case that sort of takes off and we need to look more into that perspective.
And we do, we are, I would say I'm a cheese puritan, but we do actually look at vegan products just to make sure. Yeah, we do look at them because it is an advancing market, but I'm not sure it's quite in the space yet to form a cheese rotation. But we look at these things to actually understand what is the reality behind the trend. Is it just something that looks great in a photo on social media, or is it something that has real legs that we need to actually look at and take notice of?
Take care. If you remember, sorry, I was going to say, if you remember at WTCE, we had a cheese that, from memory, had not been manufactured for 200 years, that somebody had kind of reinvented. Was it something? Is it something blue?
Yeah, it's from Hartington Creamery. So the recipe was lost, and basically what happened is, and it's only sold in a very, very tiny quantity normally, But we've managed to get some of that stock for some of our first class passengers on a certain airline. Yeah, it was a recipe that was lost. They have basically tried to revamp this recipe, and they think they've actually got it back to where the recipe was 200 years ago, which they're the kind of hero products that passengers want to try, whether it's here or some of the artisan products in the US that you normally don't get access to in the supermarket.
We hear it from our clients that they want their service to be elevated on board, whatever the cabin. And, that we're seeing that across a wide range of projects. So actually having sort of products like that available that can kind of have that story is really.
Wow, and how we actually guarantee the freshness through some of the packaging work that you've been doing around some of the sustainability, that messaging is also really important.
I think to your point as well, like we're very keen on looking globally. So just because a cheese works on, within the UK, doesn't mean it necessarily will work on an Asian carrier or a US carrier. So for us, it's really understanding what's outside of the industry. So what's going on in hospitality or in retail or on your luxurious, Michelin star restaurants, so that when the passenger is in the air on the carrier, then they're resonating with the product. They're used to it. They'll value it. And a big part of that is a lot of uncertainty at 35,000 feet. So being able to provide a service and a product to someone who might be a little bit nervous and wants to enjoy that experience, they'll feel a lot more comfortable and a bit more in control and a bit more relaxed in that flight.
Absolutely.
And there are some nationalities that are a little bit, I was going to say sniffy. They have an opinion about their own cheese, and they have a slightly different opinion about the cheese from different countries. And I think one of the things we're trying to bring to the party is the French are rightly proud of their portfolio of cheese they've got around the country. Yeah, I would say that when we presented our cheese to some of our French customers, they've been really impressed with the British cheese we put in front of them. And likewise, I think with the launch of the cheese program in the US, I think what we want to do is we want to surprise people about the potential, the quality of some of that artisanal product that we can source in the US or in the Americas. Because actually there are some really great products out there, and part of our responsibility and our role is to kind of broaden that and not educate people, because that sounds a little bit arrogant somehow, but give them the opportunity to try things they might not otherwise have tried, and to get something out. You're on a plane for a long time, might be 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours. Actually, it's about time well spent. So having a piece of cheese and having the story associated with it from its provenance and who made it and why they made cheese and the animal, that's all stuff that it's not about just filling up the time. It's actually interesting. It's interesting, and you can glean something from that if you're interested in food, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay,
So sorry, I was gonna. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I guess just to add to that around the storytelling, we can also support with crew training. So whether that's providing a guide or supporting with some kind of a digital app, etc., that they are ways that we can support our clients with making sure that, and crew on board are educated with that background on the storytelling. So that same message is being shared as part of the experience on board.
Right. You're answering all of my questions before I can even get to them, which is fun for me, but I was no, I love it. I was gonna say, I've noticed, I've heard you several times, this idea of sharing the stories and the element of the stories has come up. So why is that? Again, because cheese is something that I think at times can feel a little bit unsafe, especially for me as a vegetarian. Like, just for some reason, cheese is one of those things that falls into the category of being a little bit shy sometimes. Why do you think the stories are so important? What does the story do? And when crew can share those stories, what does that do for the passenger experience, do you think?
I mean, I think from my perspective, it's that emotional connection, and I think it's cheese is something that a lot of people grew up with. A lot of people have tasted it, and I think it's just a nice comforting and kind of just brings a bit of trust and familiarity. A lot of it comes through childhood, so it evokes those emotions of familiarity, and just sort of safety. So I think that's a big sort of part.
Also, the descriptors. So we support with menu descriptors and all of this information for the crew, like Hannah touched on. Actually, if people aren't sure about a cheese, or they think, "Oh, I'm not sure. I've read it on the menu. I'm not sure," that the crew on some of our islands actually have the ability to talk through more of the story. They do have allergen information which they can talk through. They in some cabin classes actually present the cheeses so you can see it before you actually try it. It is something that we're trying to make cheese more accessible through the cheese program. It's trying to give people, yes, a lot of choice, trying things they never have before. But in a lot of our boards, especially our UK board, we always have a Stilton, for example, because people think that's synonymous with the UK. So it's something that's a really hero product that we champion from here that's not sort of out of the comfort zone of people flying. But we do, we make sure that if people do have a dietary requirement or our customers, they request that our cheese selections are vegetarian or they are halal suitable, we actually endeavour to make those selections fit those criteria.
I was just about to say, I mean, I know we haven't got someone from technical here, but in terms of the checks that we do, it's absolutely that.
Yeah.
It's very thorough, isn't it?
Yeah, our technical checks are something that, from say for me within the wider category team, we have some technical specialists who actually spend a lot of time with cheesemakers, but also our partner suppliers, from being on the line, seeing the cheeses packed, from looking at shelf life information, checking all our specifications and attribute sheets. We work with technical to make sure that actually throughout the shelf life, the cheese profiling is right for passengers on board. We always check the quality and the consistency throughout the shelf life with random sampling. We just want to make sure that actually the cheese program meets our customer expectations, but also what the passenger expects when they're in that seat for a long time.
And as part of that, we have our surveillance programs. So we regularly get the cheese boards carted into the office here. So all those of us that love cheese and are so passionate about cheese get to try it on a regular basis. So
Yep.
I think it's a very personal kind of pride that we take in making sure that the quality is constant as it should be.
I think there's a bigger trend if you look at, you know, generally speaking, health and wellness and food in particular. People are increasingly interested in what they're consuming, and that's been a pattern over a period of time. It's not an immediate thing, but and I don't want to use the word even, but if we look at the recent activity in the US market in particular, with the pressure being placed on large branded manufacturers to remove some ingredients that consider to not be very good for people, and some discussion about corn syrup versus sugar and all these other things. Not saying that sugar is better than corn syrup, because I don't have an opinion, but the reality is, in terms of colorings and things, people are interested in what they put in their body. There's a recognition that if you put good things into your body, it's probably going to do you good. If you put bad things in your body, it's probably not as good. And I think there's an element of where sharing information about where something comes from, how it's produced, what the ingredients are, the wholesomeness of it, the heritage, the history, the breed, all these things are things that people are interested in. Supermarkets in different countries around the world have been telling those stories about the farmers, where it's grown, the seasonality, why they source certain varieties, and so on and so forth, for some period of time. I wouldn't say that we're therefore leading. We're doing something different in a different industry, which is consistent with some of the things that have happened in other industries already. And as I say, you're on a plane. It's about time well spent. It's not about filling up the time. And some of that information is, some people are interested in it. In fact, more people are interested than fewer. So I think we're recognizing those trends, and we're trying to respond to those in the selection of products and the stories we tell, and finding new things. People travel to have new experiences, and actually, if you're traveling somewhere and you have a new experience with a new product, even if you don't like it, you can at least say, well, I've tried goat's cheese rolled in rose petals, and you know what? It was not really my bag, but I know what it tastes like now. So that when I go somewhere else, you can say, actually, no, I've tried it, I don't like it, as opposed to, I don't like the sound of it, therefore I'm never going to try it. So, there's the opportunity for people to experiment in a safe way, as opposed to, sort of just say no.
Right. Yeah. To add to that as well, Nick, I think there's a lot of experience travel going on, and particularly the younger generations, they're a lot more adventurous and they're willing to try new sort of culturally appropriate foods. That's great on a flight, particularly for, you're traveling and you're going away for cuisine, because that's a massive thing at the moment. A lot of solo travelers, they want to experience new parts of the world. So being able to provide that through food straight away that's part of their journey. So it's a great opportunity for us to, yeah, help support.
And the way that those menus are created, there's options, isn't there? So those that are curious and, if your go-to cheese is a hard cheese, but there's a blue and there's a pairing that you think, oh, I want to try that. If not, you can go back to, what is a staple, so yes.
Right. Okay, so kind of on that note, we did touch on this a little bit before, but when it comes to cheese, which is such a culturally rich and like regionally diverse product, like you have said, how do you balance maybe like is there an element of authenticity? Like you're trying to balance authenticity of a product maybe from a certain region and also familiarity with passengers who maybe haven't had it before, like how does that all come together to create offerings for a global customer base?
Well, I suppose the authenticity piece is actually understanding who our passengers are and who our customers are. What do they actually want from a cheese program? Um, for us, it's we develop a criteria and we lean into the likes of Michaela and her team to actually understand what passengers are looking for. How can we give them the experience that they would like? So we look at different trends, different reporting. We actually look at flight data and actually look at what's flying across our competitors so that we can actually select things that provide that experience for them. Do you want to maybe talk
Yeah.
a little bit about some of that we do together? Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the big things that the function does is what we call a deep dive. So we'll look into the wider sort of dairy category, and we'll look at regionally what are consumers doing, what's driving their behavior, what's their purchasing habits. And then we look at generations as well. So does it differ between, Gen Z or baby boomers, just so that we can get a really good understanding of how to tailor it to the passenger. And then we share this information mainly with MPD, but it is available to the wider business so that everyone's on track with what's going on now and what's forecasted to be big in the next sort of 12 plus months. And then we work together really with the suppliers to trial new products and new pairings, sorry, to really sort of see if we can do something big exciting on board and also match what's going on at the moment so that passengers are comfortable with what they've got in front of them.
And we don't just do this on board. We do this when we think about our customers who are in the lounge, but also at events. We look at how we can serve our potential passengers and passengers different pairing options that maybe do give a taste of home. So, for example, we know that from some of the research Michaela and her team have done that French passengers, they actually prefer having their cheese with butter and bread, whereas we were serving it with biscuits or proposing with biscuits. And they sort of said, this is an alien concept to me. Why would you have it with a biscuit and a chutney? Whereas actually, from the UK point of view, of course, you have a cheddar with a chutney and a biscuit. But there's been some things even in the US where we've been already experimenting with things like sort of some harder cheeses with some chocolate covered pretzels, just to sort of cut through that sort of really salty with a little bit of sweet, and actually using that regional nuance to, oh yeah, I know what a pretzel is. Yeah, okay. Oh, here's a British cheese. Maybe I can pair them together. Again, it's bridging that gap, making it something that's super accessible that you can either have a taste of home or have a taste of your holiday on board within the cheese program. So, and this is why we have a range of, cheesemakers origins. We tend to pick things from the UK and the EU, but we have had flying in our rotations in the UK some amazing American cheeses, which I think it's actually one of my favorites that we have in the selections at the moment within the portfolio. It's something that's rubbed in espresso. So, and you wouldn't actually think we changed the perceptions of what people thought American cheese was. Yes, it's something that, again, we work with our partner manufacturers to cut and maintain the freshness of this cheese, because you can imagine actually having an American cheese on a UK cheese board actually, made some people sort of think, oh, a US cheese. Who knew that they did such amazing cheeses? And they do have some fab cheeses.
Right, right. So Andrew mentioned before, this is something that the team takes a lot of pride in, but can we go a little bit deeper into maybe evaluating cheese or pairings or combinations like taste, texture, and presentation specifically? Because I know that's a huge conversation around the way something looks on the ground or tastes on the ground versus the way it looks in the cabin. So can we kind of really get into that taste, texture, and presentation? How are those evaluated? And do you do it maybe like internally within the en route team first and then share it with customers, or what does that process look like?
Um, yes, so looking at some of the research, we think what are the flavors that are trending? I mean, texture is something that's really important when we're thinking about a cheese board. So what we do is we actually get a lot of cheeses in, and I say a lot, sometimes up to 50 cheeses, when we're considering 1 or 2 rotations, which we then get our partner suppliers in, and we look at all of these cheeses together and actually look at what shapes look great on a board, what colors, what textures, different sharpness from a blue contrasted with, say, the creamy butteriness of, say, a Gouda. We make sure that there's different countries of origin. There's just general appeal when you actually look at a cheese board. It doesn't all just look like beige on a plate. It really does. The pairings lift it as well. So when we've done events, we've done a pairing, for example, which is sort of a fresh goat's cheese with Turkish delight on a really crispy biscuit. That sort of flavor combination goes from sort of the sweet to creamy to then the crunch at the end. To again, passengers sort of think, oh, that's something different. I'm not sure I'm gonna like it, but people then love it. We also think about our customers. For example, we developed a pairing which is a British aged white Leicester, which we then paired with a mango chutney and a poppadom to think about some of our Indian carriers who were, we were looking to sort of showcase what the cheese program can achieve.
Mm. I think the other thing as well, Joan, we've also done some obviously the natural thing to pair cheese with would be wine very often.
Right.
However, we've done pairings that were with non-alcoholic beverages as well. Yeah, so what cheese will go well with a cup of tea or with a herbal tea or with a soft drink? I'm not. I couldn't tell you which the right cheese would be to have to go with Coca-Cola. That's no advertising. Other brands of cola are available. But the idea that it's not a cheese and wine party. It's actually what's going to complement the cheese and giving people that confidence. Or if they don't drink or they're not drinking that day, that they can have something with the cheese and it's going to actually complement it as opposed to do the reverse. So that's part and parcel of what we try and come up with as part of the overall proposition. That's why we talk about the cheese program. It's broader than some cheese on a plate. It is about the balance of the board, as Georgina's rightly said. It is about the color, it's about the texture, it's about the shapes, it's about how it presents, but it's also then about what are you going to have it with, because you're going to have something with the cheese, even if it's only sparkling water or still water or a soft drink.
Right. Right. So you had mentioned earlier this rotation, and we had also talked about seasonality. And I think one of my questions maybe is how agile does honor need to be in order, like, let's say it is Christmas holiday, and I think you had maybe mentioned truffle was like a good, maybe a good pairing for that time of the year. But how do you continuously maybe introduce something that feels new every year based on the seasons? How does that work?
Okay. So I don't know, great question. We develop our cheese, like Nick says, it's a program. We don't just think a season's coming up. We're thinking sort of 12 months ahead. We speak with our partner suppliers around, oh, actually, we need some different soft cheeses that need to be in this format. We need it maybe rolled in ash, which would give some mineral notes, which is great in spring. It would be great to pair it with this cheese. We think about the accompaniments. We were talking earlier about when we've done baby figs at Christmas, which is very synonymous with cheese and Christmas, to rotate out of apricots. We've also changed, for example, we planned ahead and changed one of our fruit wedges to include cranberries. Again, synonymous in Britain for being served with cheese around Christmas. The other things we do, we don't just focus on Christmas, of course not. the seasons of cheese, actually some of the best cheeses are available in the summer when you've had a really good spring flush. Some of the alpine cheeses that you can get have that really strong floral fruity notes, which they actually then wrap in mountain flowers. You can't get those all the way around the year. You can only get those at certain seasons. We work really hard with our makers and producers to make sure that we have access to these cheeses that you can't normally get hold of. So for us, we're planning ahead. We're thinking about what could that point of difference be for that menu, for that board, for that region that would really hit that customer brief. So it's no exaggeration that we are constantly looking for new cheeses, different pairings, whether even it's just the subtle hint of a chili jam to give a fiery kick in summer. Just those types of things that we are constantly looking at as a program as a whole, not just like Nick says, cheese on a board. It is so much bigger than that with regards to what we plan and do.
I think, Andrew, it's probably worth just talking a bit about that sort of demand forecasting and continuity of supply, because it being it's obviously a natural product. Cheese matures at the rate cheese matures of different cheeses. Some might be 8, 10, 12 weeks. Some could be 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years or longer. We're having to look at and consider those aspects, aren't we, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that becomes a critical piece. The kind of the illusion of agility, it actually takes an enormous amount of planning. And kind of being able to suddenly change our mind and switch to something. I think, although we are very much agile in as much as we can respond to, let's say, shocks in the supply chain, but in order to be able to respond, you have to have other things which are going as planned. So actually, that ability to plan well in advance means that we can tap into a lot of those, unusual cheeses or different cheeses that might normally be from small providers or in small volumes. And it is very much an end-to-end supply chain, all the way from the cheese producer through to the flight. So we've got obviously a team of planners. So we generate a demand plan in conjunction with our caterers and with our airline partners, and then we're sharing that on a regular basis, both kind of ahead of time when we're developing the program and the rotation, but we're then updating that on a weekly basis as we go through our production, because as we've said, that affects everything from the maturation to the cut to the volume of product that is required. And we're updating our suppliers on a weekly basis, to get the product cut and packed and delivered exactly where it needs to be. And again, it brings us back round to the conversation that we were having right at the beginning about packaging. So, the packaging enables us to have life on the cheese. So it's not like, it's being cut and then it's just being left open and, within 24 hours, it's not really edible anymore. We're using all of the technology, all of the capability, all of the knowledge that we have, so that we can keep that cheese fresh for as long as we can. It's not an enormously long time, but it's fresh for kind of several days, which enables us to get it to where it needs to be. And then that makes sure that we're not disappointing anyone in terms of these promises that we've made about these fantastic cheeses. They are actually available for them.
Because it's it's printed on menus, so if you see it on the menu, you expect to be able to get it, don't you?
Nowhere to hide.
Nowhere to hide.
Andrew, talking about packaging, I've got a question. Is there a lot of conversation happening about balancing sustainability with preservation? How does that come into conversations around packaging innovation?
Enormously. And I'm going to hand over to Hannah because she's our expert. But it's something that we've been doing a lot of work on over a number of years. And that work is only accelerating now because it is becoming more and more critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, balancing sustainability with presentation and preservation of the cheese can be a challenge, as we've all kind of mentioned, just due to the nature of the product that it is. we are proactively working with our cheese partners to find ways of reducing and removing the amount of single-use plastic, but also making sure that we're ensuring the product obviously maintains that quality that we would expect from our products. We have and are continuing to provide solutions which balance these areas. So, for example, our service delivery and bulk trays that we use on board are now made with 70% recycled plastic. Our products are gas flushed. Got to get that out. To slow down basically any product deterioration caused by oxidization. So making sure that the product, again, what we just mentioned, making sure the product kind of maintains that shelf life. And this will be key when we do, and we are currently looking at kind of parting board solutions, because of the nature of that material. Having that additional process will really kind of support trying to achieve that shelf life that we aim to achieve for our supply chain. It is and continues to be a balance, and we are actively working with our suppliers to make sure that whenever we're developing any new solutions or reviewing what we currently offer, we look at the whole piece in mind and have that all in mind.
And I think it's probably worth pointing out that obviously it's not a zero-sum game in terms of cheeses being put on board typically anyway. And yeah, we know that our solution generates lower levels of wastage of the actual product itself. We get a better yield because of the way we cut and prepare it at source. We're then not moving the rind, the other parts of the cheese that would otherwise be moved around to the caterer or to the airline. We're also getting a better yield, so we get a bigger proportion of the cheese from the block in the first place. And then actually, inevitably, when it comes to individual units around the world, there's wastage of product that isn't actually used because the challenge of managing supply and demand. So we're reducing waste in a number of areas in comparison to what the alternative way of supplying would be. Obviously, product is already packed. We're just packing it in a different way. So, the overall benefit that we can deliver is the lower wastage and reduce packaging overall throughout the supply chain. We don't use cling film therefore on plates because the product's already packed before it goes on board. So, it's important to look at these things, sort of holistically in terms of how we, whilst we might use some packaging because inevitably that's necessary to protect the product and ensure the passenger gets the quality they want, and also it's protected and not contaminated. But actually, overall, in comparison to other methods, it's probably no more packaging, and in fact, in many cases, it would be less packaging and less wastage than would occur otherwise.
Right, right.
A lot of it is around that kind of conscious choice as well. So going with, say, a bulk tray, you have got much less packaging, but many more pieces of cheese per tray, if you see what I mean. So it's kind of thinking about ways that you can kind of reduce the amount of packaging on board, and particularly where we have got solutions that have that kind of high percentage of post-consumer waste within the plastic, so 70%. And we can educate crew around that so that when they see that, they don't immediately think, oh, that's a lot of plastic. There is a positive message there, and that same message, if it is passenger facing, we can think of ways to communicate that within the packaging.
Right, right. Okay, so before we leave each other, we've talked sustainability, we've talked a little bit about vegan cheese, we've talked about health and wellness. I'm wondering if there are any other key trends that you're keeping your eye on as the cheese experts in the next 12 to 18 months. What are some things that you have in mind that you think are going to be trending?
I think from a research perspective, the biggest ones are the regionality and the provenance. I think that's just going to keep going. Like Nick said, the more that people start to focus on what they're eating and trying to understand, where it's come from, I think that's only going to keep progressing. I think that whole storytelling piece is going to be absolutely crucial moving forward. I think that for us is probably the biggest trend. I think for something to keep an eye on as well is the adventurous eating. I think that's going to also start to take off slightly. We've had the whole trends of spicy and sweet and spicy and salty, sweet and salty. And I think particularly the younger generations who are traveling a lot more and immersing themselves with that experience travel, it's just going to start to boom. So I think that's definitely something that would be really exciting in the cheese industry.
And actually touching on something that you've said and Nick said, it's thinking about how we can tailor our pairings to some of the younger generations who don't go and drink alcohol. They may not prioritize drinking alcohol on a flight. It's something that people, if you want to feel healthier when you get off of the flight, actually pairing it with a sparkling water or different flavored sparkling waters or teas, they're the kind of things that in sort of our area we're thinking about how we pair differently, not just with some of the amazing wines we have access to.
I think definitely something as well to sort of consider is, the function in the future is going to lean towards doing a lot more primary research. So not just looking at what's out there, but actually getting the passengers in, and whether we try cheese with them or we just sit down and have an open discussion with them, we want to hear from the source. What do you expect on board? Is there anything that's trending in a supermarket or something that you really want to see that has never been done before? So we'll be able to get that raw, unique, nuggets of information and then work together collaboratively across the business to make sure that the passenger gets value and the airline gets value, and everyone is really happy with what's in front of them, and that goes across all cabins as well in all regions.
Yeah, because I think one of the things is we want to be influencing our customers. We want to be influencing our airlines, giving them information that helps them shape their future development in terms of menu that's going to create high levels of customer satisfaction, net promoter scores, all those sorts of things. And the most effective way to do that is for us to be gathering information in a focused way that can help steer certain parts of the menu and the development of their food proposition moving forwards. And we're fortunate that we've got the ability to do that kind of, as Michaela says, that customer facing research to really pick out some really important points. Rather than asking about everything on a plane, we can ask specific questions about specific products or services that can give us some insights. And we've done some work in the past probably 2 to 3 months, maybe more like 4 months ago. But that in itself gave us some really interesting insights into what passengers wanted, which will influence our future product development activity in order to try and put things forward that are more likely to meet customer needs. And some of what we found out would probably be of surprise to the airline, which hopefully we can ultimately use the research to influence them to give ultimately the customer a better experience.
Right. Does anyone else have anything to add today? Have we covered everything you expected?
So,
Wonderful.
You fairly comprehensive.
No, I think
Wonderful.
it's good.
Okay, awesome. Well, I want to say thank you again. Thank you for sponsoring this edition of PAX Panel. Thank you for sharing all of your expert cheese insights with us. And I look forward to chatting with you all again soon. I'm Jane Hobson, the managing editor at PAX International, chatting today with the En route team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay.